The woman you see here, a mom, someone who is hardworking, who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, is dead. And the man allegedly responsible, if guilty, could be labeled nothing short of a monster.
Kevin Motykie.
Authorities say that man tortured this woman for hours inside his home outside Chicago in an attack that was allegedly recorded. And now we're learning that this was not the first time this suspected killer allegedly hurt this victim just this year. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick, before we get into this episode of On the Case, we're able to bring you this story because of our partner, Morgan & Morgan. There's a reason why On the Case is one of the top true crime shows on YouTube, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For more than 35 years, they've been fighting for the people, and they've recovered more than $30 billion for their clients. The proof, it's in their track record. With more than 1,000 lawyers across 100 offices nationwide, Morgan & Morgan is like hiring an army to go into battle for you, a team that will fight hard to get their clients the compensation they deserve. Not all law firms are the same. If you hire the wrong one, you may be beat before you even start. So if you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan, and their fee is free unless you win. For more information, you can go to forthepeople.com/OTC. You can click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. Before we get started, I want to give you a major trigger warning on this story. It is incredibly difficult to talk about, and what this suspect is accused of doing is nothing short of horrific. And it appears that this is just the latest alleged act of violence by this suspect. But this one took the life of someone who is truly beloved. Now, before we talk about the gruesome details of this story, I want to talk about the victim. Her name was Katherine Torbick. We know that she worked at a med spa outside of Chicago. Her coworkers posted this tribute on social media as news of her death became public. In part, it said, "In the short time she was with us, she became a part of our sisterhood. She brought warmth, energy, and genuine care to our workplace. She loved being a part of this team, and we loved having her here. She made an impact that will not be forgotten with both clients and teammates." That's what her coworkers wrote on Facebook. And according to CBS Chicago, Katherine leaves behind a 12-year-old son. And they also say she worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. She was also a survivor of alleged domestic violence at the hands of the man who prosecutors say took her life. And that man was someone who she reportedly was in a relationship with for roughly a decade. On April 30th, let's go back to this terrible day. In Schaumburg, Illinois, it's just outside Chicago, authorities responded around 9:20 at night. It was a well-being check for Katherine Torbick. The caller said they hadn't heard from her and they were worried. When police made entry into the home, they say they found her. Initially, police said there were signs of trauma, but the alleged reality is so much worse than that. Inside the home, they also found her suspected killer, 56-year-old Kevin Motykie. Police say they found him in the garage. Motykie and Torbick, they had dated for reportedly about a decade, but they broke up last month, according to this report by CBS Chicago. Police say at the time they made this terrible discovery, there was a pending warrant for arrest for aggravated domestic battery on Kevin Motykie, and it was related to what he allegedly did to Katherine Torbick just a couple months ago. Motykie allegedly had put her in the hospital in March. Now, there are obviously major questions when you hear that about how this could happen with how recently Motykie was known to law enforcement for allegedly being violent with the victim, in this case, Katherine Torbick. Now, court documents that were acquired by local media outlets say that when police found Motykie in the home, he had a recording device in his pocket. And what they say is on it is the kind of stuff that will live with even the most seasoned investigators forever. They allege that Motykie not only killed Torbick, but he allegedly tortured her and sexually assaulted her for roughly 7 hours. CBS says at one point in this recording, when you hear the horror ongoing, Motykie is heard saying something along the lines of, "It's party time," and then the torturing allegedly continued. Now, law enforcement claimed that the recording started around 2 o'clock in the morning and it went to roughly 9:30 in the morning. WGN reports that the final 4 minutes of that recording captured Torbick allegedly being strangled to death. Prosecutors also say you can hear Motykie. Now, before we talk about what else he said in the terrible moments leading up to Katherine Torbick's death, we need to talk about his alleged violent past.
But yeah, we are going to be opening. Grand opening will be at the end of January, beginning of February. Stay tuned for that exact date.
So this is a video we found on YouTube of Kevin Motykie back in 2013 at the grand opening of a spa. Motykie has a brother who's allegedly a plastic surgeon in Southern California. In 2017, Kevin helped his brother open a Chicago area med spa that was called Motykie Med Spa. Now, here's Kevin on Facebook in August of 2021 telling people to come by. But around this time, we also see that things were not going smoothly. This is a lawsuit between Kevin and his now estranged brother and business partner. Now, Katherine is actually mentioned in this lawsuit, and the lawsuit gives us a glimpse into their relationship. Now, Kevin's brother, who's this successful plastic surgeon, accused Kevin of embezzling money from that Chicago area med spa. He said that he discovered in November 2021 that Kevin was not doing something right with the books. Kevin allegedly used nearly $500,000 from their med spa for personal expenses. Now, the suit claims that the brothers had also come up with this plan where they were going to buy expensive and classic cars, and then they would resell them for profit. And the way the deal apparently was supposed to go is Kevin would take the money, buy the car, and then put the car in the business's name. But Kevin allegedly put the cars in his name. Kevin was accused of using also his son's life insurance policy to buy a car for $110,000. Now, the lawsuit shows that when Kevin's brother confronted him, Kevin reportedly threatened to kill his brother. His brother got an order of protection against Kevin after that, and Kevin was also fired as the manager of that Chicago area med spa, which appears to have closed around 2022. Now, this is where Katherine is mentioned in the lawsuit. Katherine was allegedly there when Kevin made one of these shady car purchases. In one instance, they drove to Brownsville, Texas, according to the lawsuit, in February 2021 to buy a car for more than 80 grand. Now, then it is mentioned that Katherine actually testified in the case, and she alleged that Kevin bought these expensive cars with what Kevin called his funds and that the cars were in his name. She did say that Kevin seemed frustrated when his brother wouldn't send him money. Now, the court ruled in Kevin's brother's favor, but it does appear that Kevin was appealing that ruling as recently as this year. Now you have years later, after 2021, when apparently financially things went off the rails for Kevin Motykie, he is now accused of killing Katherine Torbick. Prosecutors say that Motykie is heard on the audio recording accusing Katherine of cheating on him, which she denies. They also say she screams at him to stop hurting her, but he continues. CBS states that Katherine tried to escape, but she was allegedly bound with duct tape. At the end of the recording, Motykie reportedly said he was going to take his own life, but that did not happen. He was put under arrest. Now, what is even more chilling in all of this is that CBS says that Torbick created a videotaped statement to police over fears that Motykie would one day kill her. She filed a felony complaint against him on March 12th, and she apparently was very concerned about this. On the 12th, she was hospitalized after an alleged attack by Kevin Motykie. Now, at the same time, it is being reported that Motykie and Torbick lived together at the time of the murder, and police have said that they were reportedly unaware of that. Motykie is now in custody. He is charged with first-degree murder and 3 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault. He is next due in court on May 23rd. Join us now to talk more about this. Retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Svilar. So WBBM in Chicago was the outlet I saw that said that there was a pending arrest warrant against Kevin Motykie related to an alleged domestic violence incident in March involving the victim, in this case, Katherine Torbick. How, and we don't have all the details here, but like, how does that typically work? If he assaulted her in March, police were going to charge him with aggravated domestic battery. Like, how is he still out on the street and this close to the victim to the point where he's able to allegedly take her life?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they mean by pending. The only thing I can think of on that is, were they waiting to interview her to swear out the warrant? Because they have to do it off information that she gives. But with domestic violence, you can make an arrest without a warrant. You can make an arrest without the complainant or the victim asking to press charges if you see evidence of abuse. Do they mean pending that the warrant was sworn out, but it wasn't being executed yet because they couldn't find him? I don't exactly know what they mean there, but it's a terrible situation all the way around. But pending warrant, not sure what that means. But good Lord, what a terrible case.
It is, and we'll get into the audio recording in a moment and the horror that was captured on it, according to police. You look at these domestic violence situations and they're incredibly difficult. This was a couple that they had been together roughly a decade, reportedly. And I guess if you're police and even in this case of where, and it's unclear like how they got together that night, like who went where. I know it's being reported they had still lived together to some extent. Like, what are the challenges you face in a case like this where, there's clearly a history of physical violence here? Like, what can police do to make sure that two people stay away from each other, or he is able to stay away from her?
It's very difficult. If one party or both parties won't do it, if the other party, if the injured party continues to make contact with the party that injured him, it's very difficult for the police to do anything about that. What I'm wondering is there an order of protection? Does she swear out an order of protection? We can execute an order of protection if he comes within whatever the allotted distance is, but she's got to swear it out. The pattern of this domestic abuse, it ends up so violently. It progresses. It progresses from a slap to this, and now it ends up with a murder. The difficult thing is, and I don't know whatever reason people have for staying in relationships, financial, emotional. I don't know the reasons, but the biggest obstacle we see as first line police officers is the fact that even if there is an order of protection, sometimes they won't stay away from each other for whatever reason, and it turns into something like this.
Yeah, and we've seen sadly so many domestic violence cases where it's not a, I wouldn't say it's like a straight line. There's people, it's the highs and the lows, and it can be really tough for police to try and just do whatever they can in these situations. Getting into this audio recording, which is absolutely horrific, and you as someone who has investigated many homicides in the Chicago area in your career, just I was so taken aback just reading the details of this story. Like, I mean, how common, not like how common is probably not the best way to say it, but it's just like, what was your reaction when you hear about the 7 hours that she allegedly went through at the hands of this man?
All I can think about is the terror and the fear and the, just complete, what this girl was going through for 7 hours. And is he intentionally recording this? I mean, it's just sick. My heart hurts for that girl who had to suffer through all that, regardless of the situation. Like I talked about before, going back to the abuser, regardless of that situation, the last hours of her life were horrifying. And it's just, to have it recorded is, I've had cases where there was an accidental recording where a phone was on or something was left on and you accidentally capture it. But if this was intentional, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this guy.
Yeah, and I think from an investigative standpoint, you have police 9:20 in the evening back on April 30th. Someone had not heard from Katherine Torbick, so they called for a wellness check at this address. They go in there and they find her body, and then they also find Kevin Motykie, they say, in the garage. So you have, these two people clearly at that point, you've probably understood that he is going to be accused of taking her life. Like, what do you do next in trying to put this together? I mean, certainly you now have this, for as horrific as it is, this audio recording that can be a very, very strong piece of evidence in putting this case to rest.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any other homicide investigation. You have to do the scene, thoroughly do the scene. And I'm sure that's where they came across this audio recording. Process the scene, take the person to jail, process them like you're supposed to do. And then you just go on with the business of the case. And, like every other case, that audio is just another piece of evidence. There's other evidence in there. You're going to take samples from him. You're going to do fingernail scrapings from her. You're going to do all the things you would do in an abuse or a rape murder case, which is what this is going to turn out to be. The recording is damning. It's an audio recording. It's not a video recording. That would be even, more damning. But it's also just one piece of the investigation. It has to be processed properly. It has to go through forensics, and then you have to build your case like every other homicide.
What are the challenges that, for his horrific, and it's clear, I think, from the outside, what allegedly happened here, but courtrooms can be very different with how defense attorneys go about things. Like, what are some of the challenges that you would face now at this point? Like, okay, you have this audio recording. Like, what are the limitations on that with putting this case forward to where this would be a conviction?
Well, you have to. Well, someone's going to have to say whose voices they were. Someone's going to have to say that is my daughter, or that is my sister, and that's this guy. Someone's going to have to come up and say that's who it is. So you know. And again, it may sound silly for people who are listening, but this is a defense thing. This is what they do. You can't prove this is my client. Well, yes, we can because of this. Like I said, that's one part of it. They're going to talk about state of mind. They're going to talk about. I know I read in the article that they said that he was impaired or he was, drunk or under the influence. They're going to use that. They're not in the right state of mind. These are all defense things that they could possibly use. Good luck with that, because when you can show as a prosecutor this pattern of abuse for over the years, I think he's going to have a big problem.
Well, and with that, like, even if they were to make an argument like, okay, he was impaired, I don't know what the mental health argument would be on this, but like with how cases go in Illinois, where it's like you're not going to have the death penalty, like how does any of that like mitigate anything that could be heard on that audio recording?
And it's you're right. We should have the death penalty in certain cases like this. I know there's a lot of people that are against it, and you don't want to put to death someone who you may think may be innocent or anything like that. But if this isn't a case for the death penalty, I don't know what is. There is, as a prosecutor, I would like to prosecute this case. It seems like the evidence is overwhelming. It does not help this girl. It does not help her family. But I mean, I think in this case they're going to do okay. And again, what is the deterrent for this guy?
100%
life in prison.
I mean, and that's the thing is like you have this person, and then like we dove into his history a little bit, at least had access to a lot of money, it seems, at one point in his life. But over the last 5 years, I mean, it's just so different from the person you see in that mugshot. How much in investigating this case does the history of the relationship between these two people matter, as opposed to, truly at the end of the day, you have whatever happened throughout the 7 hours that we hear on that audio recording on April 30th?
Well, when you talk about from our standpoint, from the police's standpoint, from the investigators, it doesn't matter at all. It does not matter at all. Whatever the relationship was, it could have been the best relationship in the world for those last 7 hours that this girl suffered. That's what I'm concentrating on. I'm concentrating on proving the best case I can. Now, when you're talking about a prosecution who has to not only make their case, but they also have to think about what the defense is going to do. Makes a difference. It could bring in an argument. I mean, in this case, though, I don't see what kind of argument they could possibly bring in, regardless of the circumstances around the relationship.
How often, like in your career, would you say, and this is just more generally speaking about these domestic violence incidents, because I think a lot of times where there could be previous interactions with law enforcement for whatever reason, with an abuser. And then there's a lot of criticism of law enforcement in some of these cases. I think of very different type of case, but like Gabby Petito, everybody watches that body cam video. And of course we have the benefit of hindsight. And then there's this major criticism of police. Like, how often are you going into situations as, an officer where it might be a domestic violence call and you're trying to figure out, is there something more going on here? But then you walk away where you really can't do anything in some of these cases in that particular moment. And then, I guess how often in your mind is there that worry that like, well, something could happen? And it's like, yeah, there was we did go to the house, but at that point in time, like, you can't predict the future of what was going to happen.
Well, the law is pretty clear on this now. If you see that there's evidence of abuse, you take the offender, whether the victim wants you to or not. I mean, it's very clear that, and again, I've been in situations, and a long time ago as a patrolman, where you would try to separate people, and you take, let me take you to your brother's house, your mother's house, or something like that. You don't do that anymore. You don't do that anymore. Now, if you see abuse, you have to make an arrest. And again, it could just delay the situation, but you got to do whatever you can. And I think, I don't know what else we could do. We got to do more to protect these victims of domestic violence. But as a police officer, all you can do is arrest the person, which you should.
Absolutely. And in this case, and that's what makes, and we'll see what more information comes out of police of like the previous interaction, but it's like you have Katherine Torbick allegedly on March 12th, she goes to the hospital because Kevin Motykie allegedly assaulted her then. There's apparently a recording of her that she recorded that CBS News in Chicago says like she recorded for police that she was worried that he was going to one day kill her. And then you have this incident, like just with that being the information we know at this point, like what stands out to you about like, I guess some of the questions you would still have for the context of that situation is a lot of people are just trying to wonder, like, how did it get to this point?
Well, I mean, again, the thing I talked about earlier is where's the order of protection? Is there an order of protection? Because that at least gives law enforcement some sort of tool to intervene in that situation. Obviously, she can't make a telephone call if she's bound for 7 hours. But is there an order of protection on file? And I know that when we get dispatched to homes, we'll ask, is there a history of domestic violence? Yeah, this is the fourth or fifth call from this house. So even if you're new to the beat, you have that information when you go in. But it has to get to you. Like I said, I wish I knew whether or not there's an order of protection, because at least that's some sort of a tool that law enforcement can use.
Even with that, I mean, and sadly, we've seen a lot of other cases where there may be like an order of protection, and yet violence still happens. Like, what type of impact can that have in preventing, really at the end of the day, like preventing some of these cases from happening, where even if the law says, if he was even arrested for domestic battery, he might have been able to bond out. And it's like, what would even have stopped him at that point from doing this if this is what he allegedly wanted to do?
And that's my point. Nothing. And that's my point. There has to be other things in place to help protect the victims of domestic violence. I mean, maybe, I don't know if it's more shelters so they can remove themselves from the situation. More places they can take their families. It's a horrible thing because, I talk about the order of protection, which is nice to have because at least you have a piece of paper you can act on, but it's a piece of paper. And in the end, if the offender wants to get to this person and this person is accessible, you can't stop it.
Yeah. And it's just a horrible, horrible case. Just really hard to go through the details of what's allegedly on that audio recording. And you even have to think for the detectives, the investigators that have to listen to every single second of that and mark down what was happening. It's just the type of thing I'm sure that lives, you just don't forget about it. And even just reading it on paper is really difficult. Retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Svilar. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Before we go, I want to put this up on the screen because in stories like this, it is very important to talk about what you're looking at here. If you or anyone you know may be a victim of domestic violence, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE, or you can text START to 88788. You can remain anonymous. It is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.